Hi everyone, it's Russian Girl. I get comments where people say that I have good English, and thanks for that. It's a big pleasure to read these comments. But today I want to share with you actually how I learned English, being Russian, being raised and born in Russia. So for you to get an overall understanding how people learn English here, and also I want to share with you not just my personal story. I want to tell you how all educational system works in Russia, just for you to be able to make some conclusions and maybe compare it with the educational system of your own country. And I want to make this video in a form of a podcast, so it's not really necessary to watch it all. You can just put the phone somewhere and just listen it while you're, I don't know, cleaning dishes or while you're walking somewhere. So because, as I said, it's going to be a podcast, I'm going to talk here. I'm not going to show anything. So let's get started then. I have my notebook here because I made a plan what I want to tell you. Actually, they're going to be, I hope that this information is going to be really interesting for you. And I want to start with a school system. Let me make an important remark here. I've been born and raised in St. Petersburg. And you know, St. Petersburg and Moscow are big cities. That's why all that you will hear here, especially about the universities, it is about the university in big cities. Because, you know, many foreigners and even Russians, we say that St. Petersburg and Moscow, it's not Russia. Because Russia is mostly small town and villages somewhere in Siberia, I guess. And of course, in these small towns, they don't have these facilities that we have in big cities. That's why just let's keep it in mind. But talking about the school system, in general, in all Russia, children go to school when they turn from 6 to 7 years old. And all our education is 11 years. I know that in Europe, and as I remember in America as well, you have 12 years of education. So here it's 1 year less. So we finish school being like around 17 years old. And from the very beginning, when children just come to their first lessons, they have all subjects mandatory. So they are not choosing the subjects. We have the program, it's about all Russia, the governmental program, and we have subjects like math, Russian language, I don't know, environmental science, all these basics. And with the more years you are, the more grown up you become, the more subjects you get, of course. In Russia, we have the whole system. When you enter to the school, you stay with the same classmates for all 11 years. So we don't have this like the primary school, middle school, and high school. We kind of have this division, but we don't change the schools at this point. So for example, all my life I was coming to one building, staying with the same classmates, and that what makes me feel that my social connections are pretty strong. Yes, because I'm staying with these people almost all my life. Yes, these 11 years of school. At some point it's good, at some point maybe it's not as good because you just stay with the same people all the time and you don't get to know other people. In high school, that is called in America high school, the last 2 grades we call the high school, but again it's the same school, we don't move to the other school. We may be divided to different classes according to your future plans. If you want, for example, to study in the future medicine, you will be put in the class where biology and chemistry are the main subjects, and you will have more hours of these subjects. If you want to learn, I don't know, something like literature, you will be put in the class of literature and Russian language. And the other option you have is the math class. So these only 3 options that you have, but again, you still go to the same school. It's not something separate. So the Russian school, in general, it's really academic. So the teachers, they give us a lot of theory. but compared to, for example, European system, we have lack of practical knowledge. It's not good, it's not bad, but that's how it is here. What else? About English in particular, we start to study English from the first grade. Here, I will remember you that I'm talking in St. Petersburg. I'm talking about St. Petersburg. So we start at the age of 6 years old, we start English lessons. When I was a child, I had from the first grade like 2 or 3 hours per week of English language. And while maybe you will be surprised, like this is just 6 years old child, why you have to study English, I will explain a little later how we actually study and why we need to start at this age, why we are not waiting until we are older, for example. What else? We have the grade system from 2 to 5. So 2 is the lowest grade you can get, it's like not passed. 3 is like kind of passed, but you don't have good knowledge. 4 is like, okay, good. 5, perfect. We also start our lessons around 8:30, from 8:30 to 9. It depends on the school. I, for example, all my life went to school at 8:30. I started my classes. And usually schools are not somewhere very far away. I mean, it depends. We have public school, we have private schools. All my life I was going to the public school because public schools are also good and you don't have to pay for education. Education is free in schools. So usually children are divided, are kind of like connected to the nearest school, to their house, to the place where they live, for, you know, to give this opportunity for parents to be able to leave their child, to let the child to walk to the school by himself, for not to drive somewhere far away. But again, some parents, they prefer to go to private school, or they don't want, for example, their child to come to the school that is connected to the place where they live. Then they are applying for another school, and if there is a spot, a free spot, so this child can be taken in another school. So about the exams, we have 2 main exams period, I would say, in all our school life. Of course, every year children pass exams. Usually it's 4 times per year. Why? Because we have our studying year is divided to 4 parts, and it's called, one part is called четверть. So it's a 4th part of the year. We start studying in schools and university 1st of September, and then we finish in the end of May. And then we have June, July, August, it's public holidays for all students. Children that are in a primary school, it's first 4 grades, they have additional holidays somewhere in March, as I guess, as I remember. And also we have 1 week of holidays, the first week of November, all school students, and the Christmas holidays, the New Year holidays, it's around 2 weeks in the time of Christmas and New Year. So, but the main exams, the Russian main exams, are after 9th grade and 11th grade. Why is it in this way? And what I mean by Russian exams? This is called OG and EG. The idea is that all Russians are taking part, all students are taking part in these exams. Why after 9th grade? Because after 9th grade you have a chance to go to the college or stay in the school and continue in school for 2 more years. But college in Russia is not the same as it is, for example, in the USA. College is not university. College is like a technicum. So if you go to college, you cannot get the higher education degree. Yes, it's considered as a like middle, like average degree. Like you just finished school and then you started to get your specialization. Compared to the university, you can go only after 11th grade, the last grade, and that's why you also need to pass exams. And so if you go to the university, you study bachelor's degree. And again, the interesting fact that lately, even bachelor's degree is not really considered as a higher degree, because for you to complete your higher degree, you need to complete bachelor's and master's. It's not kind of really official. For example, I only have bachelor's degree, I have my diploma, and it means that I have the higher degree. But for some reason, people tend to say now that bachelor's is not a really complete degree, but it's just how it is in Russia. So all in all, in Russia we have really intensive education. Students are used to study long days, long evenings. We have a lot of homework all the days. So for example, we study at school from 8:30 and until around 2 or 3 p.m. And after that, me, for example, I was spending from 2 to 3 to 4 hours making my homework. And homework is obligatory, so it's not like you want, if you want you do, if you don't want you don't do. No, it is obligatory, and the next day the teacher can ask you if you've done it or not. Teachers can check it, teachers can give you a grade for it. So that's why school in Russia really gives you a discipline. And also from what I've heard recently, I was listening one interview of a professor from MIT, the university in the USA, and this professor told that in Russia we have really strong math course. So Russia is actually the best in the world for all the basic maths that we learn. That's from what I heard. And that's actually true. I will be honest with you, because my husband, for example, from Ecuador, he was teaching math. He was not a teacher, but he was helping other students to understand the things, and he was teaching at school like some additional math hours or something like that. He was not paid, as I remember, for that. And now I never was teaching math. I always had 4 in math, not perfect, not 5, 4 grade, and I know math better than him. just an interesting fact. So let's now move to how I actually learned English. As I said, English we start to learn from the first grade. My school was a school with deeper learning of English, something like that. What it means that we had a little more hours of English than, for example, in other Russian schools. Why we start from that early age? First of all, you have to understand that for Russians, actually, to learn English, it's quite difficult, because we have a different alphabet. In Russian language, we use Cyrillics. Yes, so our alphabet is completely different, and to be able to talk in English, to be able to understand English, we need first to learn the completely new alphabet. And that is why for Russians it is difficult. And also maybe you could notice that Russians usually have really strong accent, because our letters are different, and therefore our pronunciation of the words is really different. Yes, for example, in Russian I never say r, the sound r, I say r. In Russian we don't have sound the cat, the house. We have z. That's why typical Russian accent is like the house is there, the rabbit, something like that, right? Because also it's really difficult to get rid of the accent. Absolutely, I don't know if it's possible. I know that my accent is quite neutral, but I still have it. I'm not talking like American or British. By the way, in Russia we have a British English. They teach us British English, British pronunciation, British grammar, British vocabulary. I know that it's not that different, but still, as a fact. And so that's why for Russians, as I said, it's a bit difficult to learn English. But I, for example, I don't have the language degree. My degree is international business and management. So language was not my priority. Language was not my main subject. But I will tell you later why I feel like very comfortable talking in English. So also, besides of school, we have the a lot of kind of language schools where children just learn language. Of course, it's for additional payment, but I know that these schools are really popular. So parents, they want their children to speak English. They really want, because English gives you a lot of opportunities everywhere on career market, for education, for traveling, like everywhere. That's why the school education of English, how we're taught, it is not good. And if you really want to learn if you want to just know good language, you need to go additionally to the schools or take private lessons. I didn't go to any additional schools because after the school I was studying in the university where the program was fully taught in English. I think in Russia we have like 2 or 3 programs in the universities in English. All other ones are in Russian, of course. So that's why I feel more comfortable talking in English, because I had a lot of practice. But how it all started, actually, English was not my favorite subject. I will be honest with you. I didn't like learning English. I didn't want to study it when I was a child, because I don't know. I guess I didn't have an understanding why I needed. Because Russians, we tend to go even for holidays somewhere, for example, in Turkey or in Egypt, and everyone speaks Russian there. All the personnel, all the administration of the hotels, they talk in Russian because a lot of Russians go there. So there was really no need for me to know English, But all this changed when I was in 10th grade. So I was around 16 years old. And that was the time when I was deciding where I want to go study, to which university, which specialization I want to get, which bachelor's degree I want to get. And my parents and we found this program that it was completely taught in English. And of course, to be able to apply for this program, you had to pass an English test for them to understand that you will be able to study. And that was the time when I got really motivated. I really wanted to study English. I really wanted to know it better, because I understood which opportunities I have. And at that time I started to watch movies in English. I started to read books in English. I started to listen some podcasts, YouTube videos of native speakers for me to, level up my language. And I learned English quite well, even though after school I couldn't speak in English. I could read, I could understand, but I had this speaking barrier. I know that it's pretty common, but especially because Russian is really difficult from English. I know that, for example, for my husband who speaks Spanish, it is much easier for him to learn English, to talk in English, because again, the letters, the pronunciation is much similar. For me now, it's really easy to learn Spanish. I can understand almost everything from Spanish, even though I didn't learn it. I was learning it just with Duolingo, and I was learning it from listening how my husband talks, how his family talks, and because Spanish is really similar to English. It's what I can say, yes, from my personal experience, comparing it to Russian language. So after school I couldn't speak, but when I started to study in university, of course we had a lot of speaking practice, as we had to pass all the exams in English. We had to give all the presentations in English. So at that time I started to feel much better being surrounded by English. And also I had a really good chance to study abroad. So my university provided all students, the opportunity to apply for one program. I know that this program is from Europe. It's called Erasmus+. So basically this program gives grants, like scholarships, to students to go for one semester abroad for studies. And I won this scholarship, and I went to the UK. So half of the year, 6 months, I was studying my specialization, that was international business and management, I was studying it in the UK, and it really, really helped a lot because, again, this is speaking, this is practice. I was living with a British family. I was talking with a lot of British students and overall with international students. So that was a really, really big level up for me of my English skills. And after that, I came back and I got another very good opportunity. Again, I was studying with scholarship. I went as an exchange student to Denmark this time for also half of the year. And again, in Denmark, all the people, they know English, they speak really good English. And again, that was a really good practice for me. That's why now I have the husband. I have my husband, and we talk in English with him because he knows just a little of Russian. I know a little of Spanish. I mean, I can understand, but I prefer talking in English because it's easier for me. That's why we communicate in English. Since we met, we communicated in English. And that's why English is just a part of my life. That's why I started to make the videos in English, because also I really like this communication that you get with people from another countries, from another cultures, with another backgrounds. That's like something that motivates me a lot, that gives me energy. I have a lot of friends in Europe. I have some friends in America, and that's really cool to have friends all over the world, right? And English gives you these opportunities to be able to communicate with other people. But let's come back to my plan. So I also can tell you that talking about the higher education, it's really different. The higher education, I mean the university education, it's really different in Russia from Europe. I cannot compare to America because I never studied in America, but from European one, it's different. I already told you that I was studying twice in Europe. And why it's different? Because maybe Russia is still so like the approach of communists. We have really intensive and really strict educational system. In which way? Intensive, that professors really give us a lot of material and they give a lot of theory, and unfortunately in many universities there is lack of practice, and that's what is different comparing to the universities in Europe. When I was studying in Europe, we were mainly practicing something, and theory was just something like additional. And that's what I really liked. I really feel that this is the correct way, because come on, you need to practice, you need to get practical skills and not just be able to apply to be able to apply a theory and not just to know this theory, just, in numbers. That is not correct. And also why I said that the system is strict, because our professors, compared to the European ones, our professors are really like, they want you to study, and then they don't care about anything else. They don't care about your free time, they don't care about your personal life, they don't care about maybe some hobbies or sport activities that you want to do. The one thing that they care about is that you know their subject and that you will be able to pass the exams. And that's what difference. When I was studying in Denmark, for example, I really liked our professors because they were like, okay guys, we understand that you're exchange students and you came here, everything is new for you here. Maybe you miss your family, maybe you have problems now with adaptation, maybe something else, cultural shock. And that's why just take your time. Don't worry. If you don't have time today to make this homework, don't worry. You will have another day. Just make it like in these 2 weeks. And that's something that can never happen in Russia, in any university. We have really strict deadlines, and you cannot pass this deadline until you die, literally. So that's why Russian universities, they really make us to be really disciplined and to work really hard. I know that Russian students, Russian specialists, they considered they're considered as very hardworking ones, and that is true because we are used to study really hard, because we're not used to the situations when professors are like, okay, don't worry, all is okay, maybe you will have another time, just take your time, take care of yourself, be emotionally stable, take care of your mental state. Yes, that is not something about Russia at all. And also, I wanted to mention some point. I forgot. Well, anyways, about the grades, and I'm not talking about just the system of grades, because of course in different countries it can be different even within Europe, but in Russia all students know grades of each other because all grades are public. So basically there is an Excel table and you just enter, you try to find yourself within the list of all the students and you see your grade. I know that in Europe it's not in this way. In Europe it's more confidential, so every student gets just his own grades. Um, I'm not judging anything. I'm not saying if it's correct or not. It's just different. And also about Russian education, we have this problem, and this started from school years, and in universities we also have it, that it is bad here to make mistakes. From what I know about America, that in America professors, maybe not all, but from the videos that I watch, in America students, I'm not saying that they are like professors are asking to make mistakes, no, but professors are not judging for mistakes. Professors are not saying that, okay, this is not correct, you are bad. And this is what is not happening here. Here we study in the way that we are afraid of making mistakes, because for a mistake you will be punished. And this is what personally I find really, really bad, because how you can learn a subject without making mistakes? That is not possible. And also in Europe, when I was studying, we were discussing a lot of different points. For example, if I'm like a student do not agree with a professor, I can show my personal opinion, I can tell what I think about that, and this will be a discussion. And this is unfortunately what is really rarely happening in Russia. I know that some professors are in this way, they're ready to discuss, they're ready to accept the point of view of a student, but this is really, really like sometimes really, really rare cases. And again, personally, I think that this is something that should be changed in our educational system. It shouldn't be so like, this is right, this is wrong. No, there always should be a discussion. So, all in all, Russian education gives a very strong academic foundation, but often it prepares people more for the exams and not for the real life, not for the solution of real life problems. But it is how it is. I think I covered all that I wanted to say about the school system and university education, as well as I shared my story. So in conclusion, I want to mention that many people ask me if it's possible to travel to Russia or stay in Russia just with English language without knowing Russian. And for travel, it's absolutely yes, because here we have the street signs translated to English as well. All the signs in metro, in the buses are translated to English as well. The taxi app, Yandex Taxi, we have in English as well, in Spanish as well. All the bank apps in English as well. So for traveling, yes, it's not a problem. For living here, it can be a little complicated, because still all public services, all public sector, hospitals, immigration service, police, like all, they mostly speak just in Russian. You will be really lucky if you will find someone who knows English as well, but mostly it's Russian. Groceries in Russian. So if you really consider living in Russia, find a job without Russian language, it's going to be impossible. Only if you work somewhere abroad and here you just stay. though we have a lot of foreigners living here like permanently, so if you really consider to live in Russia, there will be people who will be happy to help you with some translation things, you know. And for example, for communicating with other people, you will be able to communicate because, as I said, all people in schools, they study English. My generation, we know English better because in our years the educational system has become more consistent. My parents, for example, they also know English. They can communicate very, very basics, maybe with some mistakes, maybe with not really correct grammar, but you can understand them. My parents are communicating in English with my husband, English/Russian. So if you will need to go to the coffee store and you want to ask something, most probably a person will be able to answer for you yes or no, because a person will understand your question. The generation of my grandparents, they don't speak English, but again, on the street, if you will find a person, most probably this person will be able to understand you, but to answer something really simple, because again, after school, if you don't have any practice, like practice that I had, for example, and if you don't use English, of course the language will be forgotten. That is impossible to change. But again, the basic is that people learn English in school, all people, all people. So for communication, you will not, it's not like Chinese, you know, that we don't know Chinese. Chinese is very difficult, even though a lot of China people, tourists, come to Russia. A lot of Russians go to China, but still, English is something, you know, that we feel that in Russia, we feel that English, this is something that is better to know, again, for traveling, for example. This is the language of the world. That's why we learn it. And actually, in many schools, in my schools, for example, we were also learning additional language from 6th grade. It was German or French. So in schools, I cannot communicate in French. I was really bad in it. But in schools, yes, languages, they are teaching languages. So I think I mentioned all the points that I wanted to tell you about our educational system and my personal story of relationships with English language. Please let me know if you like this format where I just talk. Maybe it was not a perfect video because it was my first time just talking on camera a lot, like having this monologue. But if you like, tell me about which topics you want to have another videos for me to tell you something more that you might like. And I hope you like this video. Please leave any feedback you may have down in the comments. Please put a like, and I see you in the next video.